welcome to the September 15th meeting of the Easton Planning and Zoning Board. This is, as you can probably tell, a hybrid meeting, so I'm going to read the procedures for remote participation. This meeting will be conducted in person and remotely over Zoom. Attendance by planning board members may be in person or remote. Both types of attendance shall count toward quorum. This meeting may be broadcast live and recorded on ECAT. To use Zoom, you'll need to use the link on the agenda or download the Zoom application, create an account, etc. You'll need the webinar ID to join by phone only. While conducting hybrid meetings, we'll endeavor to keep meeting operations as close to standard procedures as possible. However, use of the remote platform will necessitate some additional meeting protocols. While the board members or commissioners and applicants will be on video and audio, public participants invited to speak by the chair will be in person, on video, and/or audio. Public participants joining by Zoom will be muted and with no video feed. Public lines will also be muted to allow the board to conduct business and to eliminate background noise. For general meetings, not public hearings, and only for items under which the chair solicits public comment, members of the public participating in the Zoom meeting may submit a written question via text chat, provided they include their full name and address for the record. Members of the public viewing the meeting on ECAT may also submit questions in writing via email to dped@easton.ma.us. The chair reserves the right to respond to questions during the live meeting, but may limit the time for such activities. Any questions not addressed in the meeting may be answered afterwards via email and will be incorporated into the meeting minutes. All votes will be by roll call. For public hearings, during the public testimony portion of the meeting, members of the public joining via Zoom may be recognized by using the raise hand function found under participants from Zoom, or make a request with the Q&A function. If you're joining by phone only, press *9 to raise your hand. When starting testimony, please state your name and address for the record. The chair reserves the right to designate a specific point of the hearing at which testimony may be offered, the duration of the comment period afforded to each individual and/or entity, and the number of individuals and entities permitted to speak. As in any public hearing, testimony offered must be related to the hearing being held. Off-topic commentary will not be tolerated. The chair reserves the right to end the testimony of anyone who abuses use of the meeting platform and to remove them from the hearing. When all business indicated on the agenda has been completed, the members will vote to adjourn the meeting, signaling the end of the meeting and termination of the ECAT recording. To start tonight's meeting, we will do a roll call. Kedem.
Hi, here.
Kidd.
Here.
Weeks.
Here.
Zigman.
Here.
And Stetson is here as well. The first item on the agenda is a request for a continuance. This is a continued public hearing at 95 Union Street, modification to definitive subdivision and special permit. And they are looking to be put on at the next hearing on September 29th. Do I have a motion?
Motion to continue 95 Union Street to September 29th.
Kedem, second.
Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Kedem.
Aye.
Kidd.
Aye.
Weeks.
Aye.
Zigman.
Aye.
And Stetson's an aye as well. All right, on to the next one. We have a public hearing at 51 Rockland Street, special permit, common driveway, Bay Colony Group, Inc. Will you read us in?
Yes, I will. In accordance with the provisions of MGL Chapter 40A, Section 11, the Easton Planning and Zoning Board will hold a public hearing on Monday, September 15th, 2025, at 6:30 p.m. to be held in the Colleen Corona Room in Town Hall, 136 Elm Street, Easton, Mass., and remotely on the application received from Gerald F. Dalton Jr. for a special permit, common driveway, under Easton Code Book Chapter 235, Zoning, 235-56, special permits, and 235-32, common driveways, to allow the creation of a common driveway located at 51 Rockland Street, Assessor's Map 5R, Lot 298. This meeting will be conducted in person and remotely via Zoom. The virtual meeting link will be contained within the posted agenda at least 48 hours in advance of the meeting. A copy of the application and plan may be viewed on the town website. This notice is available at www.masspublicnotices.org. Those who cannot attend and wish to submit written testimony for the record may do so by sending an email with the subject address referenced on this notice to dbed@easton.ma.us. If testimony is not received by 10 a.m. day of hearing, the board may not have sufficient time to consider it. Written testimony should include your full name and address. Anonymous written comments may not be accorded the same weight as testimony from identifiable sources. Robert Stetson, Chair, 8/26/25 and 9/2/25.
Thank you, thank you. All right. So, please introduce yourself, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bill Buckley. I work for Bay Colony Group in Foxborough, and I'm here representing the applicant, Jed Tamara Dalton. Also with me here this evening is Dan Dalton and Melissa Richard. Melissa just left with the baby, and I'll just explain their role in this discussion this evening. So as you stated in the reading, we're here before the board to talk about a special permit for a common driveway at 51 Rockland Street. And what I've put up there on the board, and yay, it went up, this is the existing conditions plan, which is sheet 2 of what we've filed. It's very busy, but what it is this is a 3.1 acre parcel of land that's located on the north side of Rockland Street, about 400 feet east of Allen Street, which is over here. This is the American Legion post on the corner. This property was created around 1987, and the home was created around 1987. It's located in the residential R zoning district. So it's bordered on the west, the left side, by single families, on the north side by single families, on the south side, on the other side of Rockland Street, by single families, and then on the east side, the town of Easton owns some open space in there, and on the other side of that, again, there's a single family. So this is a single family neighborhood, and they probably were all built in approximately the same area. We want to create a new lot, which is lot 2, and I'm going to go to a next sheet. This makes it a little bit cleaner. This is sheet 3A. And what we'll be doing is creating a new lot on here. So this is, I'm going to outline it for you with my hand. This is the existing lot. This is the 3.1 acre lot. What I didn't mention over here on the left side, this other land, which is the land of Lucy, Mrs. Lucy is Mr. Dalton's sister. So this is kind of a family compound that was created again back in the 80s. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because what we'll be doing is we'll be taking some frontage from Lucy property and combining it with land of Dalton in order to give each of the 3 lots at least 150 feet of frontage. The existing Dalton lot has a single-family home, 2-story single-family home, and in the back, and let me zoom up. That's not what I wanted to do, but what I want to do is I want to zoom. That's better. So this gives you a feel for it. So this is the existing single-family house. There's a gravel driveway that comes in on the right side, and it's actually a combination gravel-concrete driveway that comes in and goes to the back, and there's a barn back there. And in the front, the driveway loops around on the front of the house. What we're intending to do here is to remove the existing barn, build a single-family home in the back there, 2-story, about 2,000 square feet, 1,000 square foot per lot. It's about 38 by 27. So it's a house that fits into the neighborhood, the size of it. And the existing barn will go away. The heavier line here will be the lot that remains. So the existing Dalton house will be in the back, in the front, and then in the back will be the new Dalton Richard house, which Mr. Dalton is, of course, the other Mr. Dalton's son and daughter-in-law. So that's the purpose of the permit. Will be coming in off of the existing gravel driveway and concrete as well. We'll be taking some of that up. We'll be turning it into asphalt. The existing barn comes down. This house will be put in. You can see it's in the same general area. We'll be putting in a new septic system in the back there. We've done soil evaluations with the Board of Health, and we've finished with the Conservation Commission and gone through, received our order of conditions with them. And the reason I didn't go into, but I can a few questions later, is there's a lot of wetland resource areas around the lot. To the right is Beaver Brook, so we have riverfront area on the lot. There's bordering vegetated wetlands. We have buffer zones to that. There's a floodplain just off to the right, and then a little bit down in the corner here. There's wetlands to the left. It's an isolated wetland, but it does count as a wetland under the local bylaw. So we went to conservation first, because that was certainly, in my opinion, the most complex piece of the pie. And that's been completed. So we filed a memo with the board to go over the criteria that we have to, that the board has to review or consider whether to grant the special permit. And I'm just going to go through it very briefly. So the first one is, this is for all special permits, social, economic, or community needs which are served by the proposal. And what we're pointing out is housing is a need within every community, and it's become a priority of our existing governor and past governors. Matter of fact, the governor just, I'm sure you probably heard, is that she just put in a new regulation that's going to force MEPA to act much quicker for any residential project as long as it meets some certain criteria. We're using the existing driveway, so we're not going to be knocking down we're not going to be knocking down trees or anything. All of the activity is taking place in the area that is already a building, a pavement, grass, or gravel. Traffic flow, safety, parking, and loading. I think everybody knows Rockland Street. It's not going to bother it at all. Adequacy of utilities and other public services. The utility in here will be tied into community water. Again, we don't anticipate any issues for a single-family home. Other public services, there won't be any other than police and fire. Again, we don't anticipate issues. Neighborhood character, social services, I talked about neighborhood character earlier. It fits in with it. Impact to the national environment, again, I discussed that briefly, which we're staying within an area that's already been developed, so there will be no impact. If anything, it's my opinion that we'll have a positive impact on the natural environment because of the amount of work that we're doing under the local wetland regulations. We'll be restoring buffer zone area. We'll be moving activities further away from the wetlands. We're creating a visual barrier of a fence, and then we're doing a significant amount of plantings as well. And then the economic and fiscal impact to the town. Tax revenue, it's like an annuity. Town gets some revenue out of it, much more than to be getting from that barn that's currently there. There is, of course, a cost for children as well, but we don't anticipate that to be, a huge, again, one or two persons. Then the second group of criteria that the board considers for a common driveway talks about the fact that the common driveway can't be more than 500 feet from the street to the building, and ours is a little over 200 feet. The common driveway has to be located within the boundaries of the lots. It will be completely located within the existing lot, and then, of course, the new lot as well. There will be, it has to be, provide access and be appropriately buffered. Again, we have to do a significant amount of buffering within there. To the right of our lot is a wetland, and we have some woods in that area that's at least 30 feet wide. And then the abutting open space, or at least a small portion of it there, at least in the front, is owned by the town. And as you get further back, maybe 100 feet, it gets wider as well. Center line of the driveway has to be, not more than 45 degrees. We're pretty much at 90 degrees. Minimum cleared width of 18 feet, travel width of 12. We will meet that criteria. When we finished paving it, we've given an 18-foot wide easement to the lot in the back. There is a shed there that will be taken down in order to ensure that we'll have that 18 feet of wide. A roadway surface of 4 inches of graded gravel. It's already graded gravel. It's been there for 40-something years, 30-something years. And as I stated, there's concrete as well, and we'll be either leaving some gravel in the front and then paving the rest of it. The grading, no more than 8%, where that this site is flat as you come in off the street. The common driveway shall not disrupt existing drainage patterns. Again, this area is what it is. We're not changing what it is, other than the fact that we're actually reducing the amount of what conservation calls degraded areas. So we're decreasing the amount of, they count degraded as pavement, building, and gravel. And we'll be decreasing that amount by removing some of the gravel around the barn and planting it grass. We've given you a draft document to show that the easement will run in perpetuity in favor of the house to the rear, and that the town will have no requirement to do any maintenance of it, and it cannot be used for frontage. And I think that is it. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer it.
Oh, I was very comprehensive, thank you. I just assume that you wouldn't be able to get access from the frontage area because of the vernal pools there?
We wouldn't definitely not gonna be able to go there. We'd have to look at coming in close to that house, and I'm not sure we can meet the setback requirements.
Okay. Ken?
So I think, so I got Attorney Buckley's, his narrative. Engineer.
Thank you.
I know an Attorney Buckley. So I pretty much concur with everything that he had stated. This was, as you guys know, this is a dual A&R plan as well as a common driveway special permit. Everything pretty much matches pretty well on here. We've looked at the adequacy of the access standard as you do for A&Rs. Really the only, as you've seen on the staff report, I've pretty much concurred with everything he's put together. The draft easement, I've looked at several of these in the past, pretty standard, straightforward, matches and meets everything that the bylaw requires. As you guys know, that'll be recorded simultaneously with the plan and will run in perpetuity with the properties. Really, that's the only condition unique to this one, is having that easement documentation simultaneously recorded, which will not be a problem. And really, the A&R plan will mostly be, I believe in the plan here, it's sheet number 1, and it shows the barn. We'll have a few edits on here just to get it to final form for the registry. But the plan sheet 1 will have the endorsement and show the barn to be removed and provide area for endorsement. But everything on here is it's a pretty straightforward proposal. Had no issues. Went to conservation, which is good. Always like to have them go first. We've had the internal discussion about just making sure the process works well. He's gone ahead, he's done his homework, and I think it's a pretty good plan for a relatively straightforward proposal.
Excellent, thank you.
And
Yeah.
just a clarification, conservation has approved this.
That's correct, yes.
Formally. Okay.
Correct, yeah. I believe Mr. Buckley, I believe the order of conditions has been recorded already, or are you waiting? Okay. Yeah.
The grade from the street, you said is flat, or is there any uphill grade from the street?
So if you probably come in maybe the first 100 feet when you get from the street to the house, it's relatively flat, and then maybe there's about a 2 or 3% grade beyond that.
Is that area going to be paved, or there was something in our
Yes.
bylaws that you had to pave from the street if it was run out from gravel?
Well, it has to be 4 inches of gravel, compacted gravel. So in this particular case, it's already gravel, and we'll be leaving it there unless they decide they want to pave it. But what we do is we show the paving in this heavier hatch here. So it'll be next to the house, which is where the concrete starts. And it's actually partially concrete. And then in the back there, we'll be paving it so that they'll have that driveway to the front, which is the front of their house. And then they'll have that little side driveway to park vehicles or to back out, so they don't have to back off.
So that's the way it's been. It's not paved to the street now, and the plan is to leave it that way.
Yes.
Is there any drainage problems related to this that need to be considered when the plans come up for approval?
No, I don't think so. We went to conservation, and they, of course, look at drainage a lot. But what's going to happen here, and that's what happens now, is if you look at the house and look to the left, it falls off to the left because there's a wetland there, and then it falls off to the right because there's a river there and a wetland. So we're going to be retaining that high point ridge, actually bringing it up a little bit in order to put the septic system in. So runoff should not be an issue here.
Anyone else? Joanne?
Nothing from me.
All right. At this time, I'm going to open it up to the public.
I'm the next house.
If you
My
would,
name is Richard Ryberg.
if you would please step up to the microphone. Yep. Or we can bring it to you as well if that's too
Yeah,
difficult.
just slow.
And just and then when you get there, just introduce yourself and state your address.
My name is Richard Ryberg. My address is 47 Rockland Street, which is the next house east of the Dalton house, and I'm for this.
Wonderful.
100% for this. When can they start?
Well, thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you.
And thanks for coming. Suzanne, do we have anyone online?
No one's raising their hand.
All right.
Motion to close the hearing.
Would you like us to close the hearing?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So, motion to close the hearing, Kevin?
Second, Kid?
Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Kedem?
Aye.
Kid?
Aye.
Weeks?
Aye.
Zigman?
Aye.
Stetson's an aye as well. Anything else here to discuss? I mean, we got overwhelming support. Seems like a thoughtful plan to me.
Very good.
Motion?
Thank you.
Motion to approve a plan as presented, Kevin?
Second?
Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Kedem?
Aye.
Kid?
Aye.
Weeks?
Aye.
Zigman?
Aye.
And Stetson's an aye as well. Good luck to you guys.
Thank you
Thank you
very
for
much,
coming in.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
What else is, we need them?
Yes.
Can we start tomorrow?
We've done our part. Good luck.
That's all we can do.
Start tomorrow?
Actually, we need to, we need to approve the A&R as well. Yeah, so, I'm sorry,
We can't approve it.
Is it one thing?
well, don't we, with an A&R, we always, for whatever reason, we put them on, and we usually vote to, I guess we vote to endorse, is that what it is?
Yes.
Typically?
Yeah.
All right, so we're just gonna do a quick, all right. So, the next matter on is the A&R plan on the same project, 51 Rockland Street. We've already received the comments and everything, the explanation. At this point, do we have a vote to endorse the plan?
Vote to endorse the NAR, Kevin?
Second?
Second.
Any further
You
discussion?
can pick one.
Yeah.
Hearing and seeing none. Kedem?
Aye.
Kid?
Aye.
Weeks?
Aye.
Zigman?
Aye.
And Stetson's an aye as well. Now you guys are all set.
Well, we need to sign
Can
it.
they start tomorrow?
Is this the plan?
Sign before.
Because they have to file their easements with it.
We'll let them know they can come back later. All right. Next up is draft master plan update presentation, BSC Group.
We don't hear you.
We
No
can't
voice.
hear you.
No voice.
We can see you.
muted.
I'll double check this. No?
There you go. We can hear you now, but
Oh,
your
great.
voice is a little bit low. If you could speak
Volume.
up a little bit.
Yep, I will give it a try. Is this any better?
That's a little bit better. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for having me, Joanne. I didn't know if you wanted to kick anything off, or do you want me to just jump right in?
No, please.
No, I
jump
just
right
wanted
in.
to, yeah, let me just, sorry, Chair. I just wanted to mention that Jeff, for those of you that don't know on the commission, Jeff Bagg and his colleague Heather Gould and others at BSC Group have been working on the master plan update committee. And so Jeff is here to give us an overview of that and tell us where we're at.
Great. Thanks, Joanne. And Joanne is on the Master Plan Update Committee, and it's a really good liaison position. Before I share my screen, I think what I just wanted to make sure was clear for the board, there's no vote being taken tonight. We're here to kind of give an update. My understanding is the board should have received sort of the draft plan a couple weeks ago. And so, the hope tonight is that we could get some potential feedback from the planning and zoning board members. And where we are at currently is that the plan is out for a 30-day public comment period, and that ends next week on the 24th. And so BSC Group's scheduled to appear at the Master Plan Update Committee next week, and that group is going to kind of review the public comments that have been received. We received some comments from the town administrator and a few other folks. If we get some comments tonight, they'll be incorporated into a next draft. And then our steps from here is to go to the select board for a presentation in October. And then finally, we'll be back before the planning and zoning board in November. And at that point is when your group would presumably be adopting the master plan. So without further ado, I'm just going to share a few slides. I don't know if any of you made it to the community meeting. We had that back in June. Let's just make sure this is sharing. Okay, so there we go. Some of the slides are similar. Some have been updated since then. But just real basic, sort of Master Plan 101. It's really, Master Plan is really a blueprint for how the town can accomplish community goals over the next 10 years. And something, we like to say that this is sort of high level. So it establishes a lot of goals. It doesn't necessarily create a lot of specific plans, or it doesn't create a plan unto itself. It creates an outline for work that the town has to sort of prioritize and do over periods of time. This project was an update from the 2014 plan, and it was funded by a grant from the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. And a couple quick notes, is that we're kind of refining and enhancing the existing plan. We're sensitive to the fact that this is not a complete rewrite. We're not starting from scratch. We're not going back and reproducing the entire document. What we're trying to do is use current conditions and a lot of the planning work that has been done and demographics to identify trends and challenges that have appeared since 2014, and sort of to help the town kind of go from 2014 to 2025 and find what potential new issues there are that the town needs to work towards over the next 10 years. And what we're seeing, is common, but we're seeing that around growth, housing growth, and economic growth. Climate change is a big component to complement the town's work on its climate action plan, and then just some evolving community needs. And again, just hear the note that the planning board is the board who ultimately adopts the plan. Just one slide on some existing conditions. If you all have the draft report, there's 25 pages devoted to capturing demographics and information about how Easton has grown and changed since 2014. But just a couple of highlights here. The population growth just between 2010 and 2023. I just did the math. So, there was an increase, this is estimates, but about 2,050 people was the population increase over that 13-year period. And then, the UMass Donahue Institute does some forecasting. It's a little bit generic. It's taken with a grain of salt, but looking ahead to 2045, Easton's expected to have about a 0.5% increase. And that equates to about just over a thousand additional people. So about half the growth, is what's at least anticipated. And then we look at a lot of the land use characteristics, the pie chart. The theme that we see here is just that Easton is, like a lot of communities, it's really primarily residentially zoned. Primarily single family housing is the dominant sort of land use, and it consumes the most acreage of the town, followed by the other categories. So water, exempt land, agricultural, and some 5.3% of the area at Easton is commercial space. And then just quick on income and housing. We're looking back 2010 to 2023. You know, um, Increases that are consistent with the region. But at the bottom of that graphic, we inserted 2025, and we're using Zillow for the source of at least of this one. But the median home value, it jumped up significantly in the past several years. It's happened across a lot of communities, but the difference between the median value in 2023 versus 2025 is significant. And that's one of these driving conversations that we're seeing. The cost of owning, a house or a unit in Easton, but also in a lot of places has gone up significantly. It's one of the biggest challenges that a lot of communities are facing. This graphic, I realize in the room it's probably hard to see. We are going to do some fine tuning. We got some comments on this graphic from the town administrator, and so we're going to add a couple projects, and we're going to just make some minor adjustments to some of the dates. But looking at this, our goal was to illustrate all the hard work that Easton has done since 2014 to plan and prepare. And there's been a lot of studies that we're using as the basis to help inform the next steps for the next 10 years. And one of the things we wanted to mention is that a lot of these projects had their own community engagement, and they had their own participation by residents or businesses. And so we're taking as many of these plans as we can, and we're pulling through either the key themes, a trend, or whether it's a goal or an action. There's a lot of really specific plans. There's a lot of specific actions in a lot of these plans, and we're really trying to use the master plan as the storing house, the place where one person, a person could go and find all this information in one place. So we could talk about this in the final product. These should all be clickable links, so that when someone accesses the plan online, they should be able to click and access the actual plan from the master plan. This is a graphic that we used during the community meeting. It's probably nothing new to any of you sitting around the table there, but we did highlight, that there's four really main activity centers. The Queesit Commercial District, the Industrial Park, in and around Northeastern, and the Five Corners and Foundry Street. There are other smaller pockets. We're not trying to say that this is the only areas where there's activity, but these are really themes that we see across a lot of different projects and plans, focusing attention, enhancing infrastructure, and looking at opportunities to increase either housing or economic development in these areas. This is a real theme. So we kind of created this graphic just to help walk people through that. And if you have not read the 2014 plan, it's very long. It clocks in at over 350 pages, but it's got a wealth of information. But one of the themes that was occurring in 2014 was sustainability. And as we go through all the plans and information and the public engagement, we're really finding that the theme of sustainability stays its course. And it really, across the first four topics, the first four topical areas, there's a really good way to describe each of them through a sustainable lens. So housing, economic development, climate, and the environment, they all present themselves as ways that the town could continue to nurture and grow these things and make sure that they're sustainable in the long run. And then we have these other kind of groupings of important topics. So the financial, arena, things related to town finances is discussed in the plan. Transportation and connectivity, public health, municipal buildings, and open space and recreation. And this is one change that you'll see when we come back in November, based on some feedback we got, that we're gonna move the report, as you'll have read when we get into chapter 2. It starts with a discussion of finances, and it was really omnipresent in our last year working on this project. We're moving it down the list a little bit to fall in a place that's a little bit more traditional for a master plan. It's still really relevant, but I think we're just going to move it because we see that housing and economic development and climate are really the main topics that we want to put forward in the master plan first, and then kind of have that financial component in the middle. So that is a change that we can talk about after I stop sharing my screen, and one of the changes that you'll see when we come back in November. Some trends and challenges. So for these slides, I tried to pull the text from the master plan to keep everything consistent. So if you've read the master plan draft that you have, it's pretty similar. But some of the housing trends are really emphasizing affordable housing, encouraging mixed use and increased density, and that's in certain areas. And then really looking at the utilization of town-owned land to support new housing growth. And then some of the housing challenges, which I already mentioned, are the high cost of housing is critical. It's definitely an issue that has no one single solution. And then kind of related, which is the changing demographics in Easton, is meeting these diverse housing needs across a mix of different user groups and ages. And then looking at zoning flexibility while maintaining community character. So most people always hear from developers, this desire to have more flexible zoning, but making sure that the character that everyone knows and loves for Easton remains intact and is protected somehow. And then how affordability is impacted by the cost of development. In the past several years, the cost of development has skyrocketed, and it makes providing affordable housing a lot more difficult. And then shifting to economic development trends, really one of the top themes across almost every plan that the town has prepared is this idea of encouraging development in these activity centers. With the Shoveltown Cultural District really integrating arts and culture into the economy as a driver for both people who live in Easton and visitors to come out. And then a project that I think has come to the planning board is kind of an audit of the permitting process. So looking at the regulations and looking at ways to make the process a little bit more streamlined for applicants is an important part of all this. And just continuing to support businesses post-COVID, still feeling the effects of several years ago, and so continuing to support businesses. And then really came through in the community meeting where there was a lot of support for continuing to look at the industrial park, looking for ways to expand and grow the opportunities in that area. And then some of the challenges are really that a lot of this is dependent upon infrastructure and infrastructure improvements. The town has done a tremendous amount, but there's still work that needs to be done to support that. And then just when I mentioned kind of the amount of area in Easton that's residentially zoned and what's available for commercial use, it's really limited in terms of commercial area. And then the regulatory complexity, whether it's perception or reality, it is out there as a challenge. And then the need to just balance growth and preservation. And then for climate, we're really relying on the town's ongoing effort. If you're not aware, the town is going through a climate action plan. It's a separate process, pretty detailed. But what we're pulling through from there are some of the trends and challenges. And some of the trends is really looking at bringing resilience into all facets of town hall and the municipal government, TPW, and other departments, really institutionalizing it. And then looking at water resource protection, open space and natural resource preservation, and then sustainable transportation. And so, one way to combat climate change is to reduce carbon emissions, and one way to do that is to provide more transportation options. Some of the challenges are that the infrastructure that we all have is really getting stressed by the storm events, the increased rainfall amounts that we're getting, and that's a really big challenge that is costly and requires prioritization. Funding and implementation gaps. So it's pretty easy to identify needs. It's a lot harder to find the funding to resolve them. Stakeholder coordination. So getting homeowners and businesses on in line and understanding the resources that are available, and then equity and environmental access. So just making sure that when we talk about climate change, it's available for all the residents in Easton, and that's an important component. And then lastly, in terms of trends and challenges here, looking at the financial trends. And so the positives here are really that the town has done a great job using a variety of different tools, including the DIF, so the District Improvement Financing Program, looking at cost efficiencies. So, through our research and some of the discussions in the community, the town is really a lean operation, and just really continuing to look at that and just make sure that that's always kind of a lens that people are looking at. Public engagement and budgeting. The town has been, very transparent in its budget process, but through that PACE program over the last year, there's really just a renewed interest and a desire for people to be engaged in that process. And then as the town has done with Mass Works and other grants, just leveraging state and federal funding. Shifting to some challenges. So the structural budget deficit, the town is in a tough spot. It's caused by a bunch of different circumstances all coming together at the same time. It's not necessarily unique to Easton, but it is a challenge that is going to face the town for a couple of years. Limited growth in revenue streams, sustainability of services, need for financial equity, unfunded mandates, and future facilities needs. Kind of going over this quickly, but those are all factors in challenges. And then the last one is really important, just to touch on, with these budget deficits, it is going to be difficult for the town to talk about some of the facility needs and some of the more big ticket items that may come up in the future. But, I would say my observation working with the town for the past, 10 months is that there's a devoted crew of people looking at this and trying to find the solutions. And so we wanted to include it in the master plan because it does factor in, but it's not the leading thing that, is the most important in the master plan in terms of the next 10 years for development. And then quickly, some of the summary of goals. So the board should have in your packet a matrix, which is much more detailed, and it has goals and actions. And what I pulled through here are the goals. And really, this support for new growth and existing activities is the major theme. Improving the permitting process, continuing to support Five Corners growth, and then increasing and enhancing the development in the industrial park. That was a big driver of some conversation, and it seems like there's a lot of opportunity there. And then supporting arts and culture. And then in terms of housing goals, pulling a lot from the housing production plan and the Affordable Housing Trust, really looking to locate new housing in ways that enhances the vitality and walkability, encouraging housing in underutilized areas or sites, and then promoting diversification of housing types. So, we often see that sometimes there's a need for a certain type of housing, and really just identifying what that is and trying to find ways to support that, coming into Easton, and always expanding affordable options and raising awareness of assistance programs that are out there. And then for the climate, what I did with this is we recently got a copy of the draft climate action plan, and they have a nice setup in there for a blueprint. So if they have, let's say, 25 goals and objectives, they identify these top 5 for the town to pursue sort of first, let's say in the next couple of years. And so I pulled those through. So for buildings and energy, really promoting this commercial PACE program. And what this is really a way for property owners to access financing, and then so they get a loan and they repay it through their tax bill. And so this is going to be one of the recommendations that the town will see in terms of supporting commercial buildings becoming more resilient. Natural resources, nothing really new, but promoting sustainable, healthy landscape practices. So this is both homeowners and businesses. And then looking at resilient communities and just really trying to provide the more vulnerable populations with education and assistance. So we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to provide their contribution to being more sustainable. And so that goes for all residents. Transportation, you know, there are some conversations how, Easton is unlikely to get bus service. It's just not viable given the population that, the small population relative to some of the surrounding areas. So to work through that is really encouraging infill development and really kind of focusing on the areas that are already developed and have sewer and sidewalks and infrastructure. And then for waste and reducing waste, the climate action plan calls for kind of a public education campaign, ways that residents and business owners can help directly. Couple more, and then I'm almost done, and I'm happy to answer questions. But in terms of transportation and connectivity, this is where expanding rideshare service. So think shuttle buses, think the services that the senior center might provide, and looking for ways to fund and expand those so that residents can get around within Easton and adjacent towns. And that's going to be really sort of core to this creating more options for transportation. And then, the DPW and the town and the select board and a lot of people have really been focused and supporting Mass DOT projects and the TIP, so it's the Transportation Improvement Program. And what we see over the next, maybe it's 5, 10 years, is two really significant projects continuing to the work on Foundry Street and then the Washington Street corridor, which really is going to be a great opportunity for the town to upgrade the pedestrian and vehicle safety opportunities along both of those streets. And so those were raised to us as sort of the highest priority projects that the town can support over the next 10 years. And then pursuing and supporting Safe Routes to School. It's another program that allows for construction of sidewalks and bike paths to get kids more safely to school without taking a bus. And then sort of the last couple of buckets here are municipal buildings. So the town has a project underway to look at the municipal surplus properties. So there's a few that got created by the construction of the new public safety complex. So the DPW building, the police and fire headquarters, and then the fire station and water department. There should be a bullet here. I'm just noticing. So where it says first station 3 and water department, those 3 buildings are being studied by a project that it's going to have its own recommendation and findings. And then what we did identify through our process is that there is a potential need, a conversation for a new senior center. Maybe not immediately, but sometime in the next 10 years. It seems like that may be a conversation that the community will be having. So that should have its own bullet. I apologize for that. With some help from the master plan update committee, we really see public health, and the health department that you have has grown a lot and it's doing a lot of things to support its residents. And really, some of the goals here are trying to minimize financial impacts to seniors, veterans, and those with disabilities, and really enhancing the communication to reach all residents, and then kind of continuing to expand social and mental health services. So those are all kind of goals around public health, which we are seeing a good trend for master plans to consider these types of things. And for open space and recreation, we're relying on the town has a up-to-date open space and rec plan, and really it calls for providing more activities for age specific groups. So it's across the board. Every age group needs different types of activities, but continuing to provide those. Improving access to water, and maintaining the existing open spaces and parks. That's a consistent thing that we see in almost every community. And unfortunately, it is a challenge to find that type of funding for staff to be maintaining these spaces. But there are some creative ideas for friends of groups and volunteers to take on certain areas. Always trying to connect open spaces together. So if there's an opportunity to get from one open space area to another, that's always critical. And then prioritizing key parcels and just identifying the land in Easton that is going to be super important to preserve, and trying to focus on that and having a focus for that. The last 2 slides here. So public engagement, just a quick recap. So we're working through the MPUC. It's a group that was created through the select board in August 2024. And we've been meeting monthly. So we've had 12 meetings between October and this month's meeting we're counting in there. We did stakeholder interviews, so we met with the DPW director, the deputy director, and the water manager. The assistant town administrator, planning director has been highly involved in the project, and we met with the select board chair. And then we also talked to the finance director and then the chair of the PACE committee. We talked to Chamber of Commerce and several business owners. We had sort of a roundtable discussion. And then in June, so this actually should be, sorry, there's a typo. This should actually be June 24th, 2025. So that was actually, this past June. We had a meeting at Frothingham Hall, and we had 30 people. We did a presentation, small groups, and interactive poll. And to end my slides, just a reminder that the public comment period is still open, and so that's why we wanted to come to the planning board now to make sure that you're aware of the plan, and if you have any comments or feedback, we can take it tonight, or we can get it submitted in writing sometime in the next week or so. We're going to be meeting with the update committee on the 24th to review all the public comments, and then we have a short period of time to pull together all the comments into another draft, and that's the one that we're going to present to the select board tentatively on October 20th. And then after we hear from the select board, we'll kind of quickly be back to the planning and zoning board to hope for the committee to vote to adopt the plan. So that's the quick overview, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen and see if we have any questions or discussion.
Well, thank you for that presentation. It's very helpful. And it touches on some things that I know we've been talking about in this room for a while. The first thing I wanted to ask you about was the industrial park. We are, and we're probably going to talk about it a little bit later, that's an area that we've been wanting to take a look at and make some changes to. I wondered during your due diligence process whether you've heard any specific ideas for enhancing or expanding that park in a way that could be useful to the town's finances.
We heard some creative ones, and it should come through. We have, a summary of the public comments, the summary of the community meeting. There were some creative ideas that we heard. There was people who thought that the periphery maybe that could be more suitable for housing. We heard the idea of a hotel being, there was nothing specific, but the idea of a hotel to support, visitors to Easton or visitors to the college as a way to change the financial dynamic. But the other was really based on, there's a 2014 study that really showed that there is underutilized space within the industrial park, and trying to just make sure. So from there, it's really looking at building height, parking requirements, lot coverage, and other constraints. So the tough thing about us coming in and doing a master plan is we often don't get to that level of detail that we would like to with you guys. But to talk about focusing on the industrial park and looking at those zoning criteria to see if there's things that could be changed. I think bringing in property owners who own property in the industrial park and talking to them about any constraints that they've encountered or anything that would help them, that might be a really important next step for the planning board to look at doing for that.
All right. I guess a separate but related topic is when you're looking at development, one of the things that we always run into when we're pitching multifamily, or we have at least in the past few years, is the idea of development revenue versus the financial burden of bringing new population into the town. What's the sweet spot? I mean, that's something I feel like we're sort of usually aiming in the dark at. And I wonder from your vantage point, having studied these issues far and wide, what is the sweet spot for multifamily in particular, just because that tends to be, especially in a community like ours, the highest and best use of land?
That's a great question. It will come slightly from observation, but I think one direction that we see a lot of communities going is looking at the projected enrollment in schools. So we know that Easton just built a new school, But when you look at most communities, projected enrollment for students is projected to go down. And I think getting a handle on that and talking through um, what that means for a community, generally speaking, communities do not want declining enrollment. It's not a positive trend. And so what we've seen a lot of communities be successful at is finding those enrollment trends and having those, they're difficult conversations, but starting to have those to be prepared to provide more housing and more students to offset declining enrollment. And so it's not the end all be all, but I think that's one conversation. The other that I know Easton has had, and I think it's still worthwhile, is that housing is someone said your previous speaker talked about how the governor and the Massachusetts is in a housing crisis and the state administration is really supporting new housing development to provide the infrastructure that's necessary. So there's areas in Easton that would still benefit from having sewer, and there's the environmental benefit of bringing sewer into neighborhoods to offset, septic systems and things like that. And so housing is one of the best development tools to get access to infrastructure money for sewers. So I think having those probably tough conversations with people moving forward to kind of find ways to support providing let's say more dense housing. It doesn't have to be high density in every case, but I think those are some tools that we see pretty commonly kind of being deployed by towns who are trying to do what Easton's doing, which is provide some more housing.
Well, all right. Last question from me, and then I'll be quiet. You know, it's no surprise seeing the chart of land use where the vast majority of what we've got is non-developable land, and then matched only by the residential areas that we have in Easton. And I guess my question is for you, since we're not going to be expanding the size of Easton, is there anything that you've seen or any areas that fall under those two, rubrics, whether it's non-developable or for whatever reason, and residential that might be ripe for a change?
It's also a great question. I don't think that we got into that level of detail. I think that I think it's an activity that the town would still need to do. Somewhere in the list of actions is to talk about a build out analysis. So to take some kind of current data of what's developed and what's not, and starting from there. And I think the focus would be these areas that are already developed and looking at the periphery of those and trying to see if there's any land area that is suitable. And I know that that's not the easiest um, thing to identify. So there's multiple factors, but I think starting with the activity areas and branching out from there would be one option. And then really looking, we see it was the plan that was generated in response to the pandemic, the local rapid recovery plan. It was a concerted planning effort. A lot of communities did it around that time. That plan is solely focused on Washington Street and that whole corridor. And we can see that corridor has a lot of underutilized properties that with the right amount of infrastructure and time, there looks like there would be, opportunities for some of those properties to change over time and be redeveloped from something that they're, today to something new in the future. And that could support higher density just given the nature of the roadway, the number of vehicle trips that are already generated on that road. And so that would be one of our, I think that's in the plan as well, as to focus on Washington Street corridor as an opportunity.
Thank you very much. Board members.
Yeah, making the permitting more efficient or better suited, and more specifically, this board is responsible for the bylaws, and they are somehow cumbersome and difficult to navigate for someone that doesn't know it. And I have been on the board for many years and still have some difficulties sometimes figure out what exactly is what that bylaws is saying. How important is that, given the scope of the master plan?
That's a good question. We are relying on the study that's going underway now. I don't know if the planning board has been presented with any of those findings by the consultant that I know him because I'm out in Western Mass. So Wayne Fiden is the consultant who's working on looking at all the permitting requirements. And I think it is really important for a developer to have clarity and to be able to walk in, and now it's Ken. We heard a lot of positive comments from the business community that the town is good to work with. They feel supported going through the process, but streamlining the regulations and making it clear what the expectations are is really it's sort of um, it's sort of one of the lowest hanging fruit to put some effort in and to make sure that those processes are as streamlined as possible so that a developer at least doesn't have to worry about that. They will have a myriad of other things to worry about, but it won't be the permitting path. I think some of the recommendations is always about looking at what uses or requirements are a special permit and what uses might be site plan review, because that predictability for a developer is often what makes them choose to move forward with a project. As all of you probably know, the permitting process is expensive, and there's a lot of unknowns and a lot of ambiguity at the beginning of a developer's path, and to to have them feel more comfortable that they can get a permit at the end of the day makes them more likely to move forward with the investment. And so, in terms of the amount of labor and the outcomes, I would say that it's a low hanging fruit. It's worth the time and effort to go through the regulations that you have, the checklists, and streamline it. And I think knowing that you have to get your zoning bylaw approved by town meeting, there's still the opportunity to genuinely say that there's still a review process. We're just trying to make it clearer and easier for someone to navigate it. So I would say it's really important, and you don't technically need any consultant help to do that. You could kind of use that report that you're going to get on the permitting path and take those steps.
A following question to that one. Do you know of any town that have re-redacted and redone the bylaws to make it them better? And who does that job?
Yeah, I'm not that familiar with that. I mean, I think what I would say is I know that there's two general processes that communities do. One is a diagnostic to find out where the issues are, and one is recodification. And recodification is really just reorganizing your existing bylaw. But what I think with your other consultant and on that project, I think that they have a clear set of recommended actions for the town to take to change permitting requirements, to adjust certain regulations, and really to move forward. And I think that other project that you should be finishing up soon, that should be your guide kind of to move forward with the permitting adjustments that seem like they're being recommended.
Thank you.
Quick one. I heard you mention sewer. When we had our forum in here with some developers, there was a clear message there that improving the sewer infrastructure, particularly in business areas, would really drive a lot of development. And so I started thinking about that a little bit, and I just look at what Mansfield has done with expanding their sewer. I mean, they built a village around the train station. They've attracted tons of business. They've funneled that into improving the schools. They were just ranked number 30 public high school in the state. That's where OA used to be, when I moved into town in the 90s. I don't want to turn this into a school discussion. I know that's somewhat different. But I don't want to underestimate, and I did see sewer sprinkled somewhere in the master plan, but I don't want to underestimate the impact that can have to drive higher density housing, drive business, get more money into town, and if the schools improve, we'll stem the declining enrollment. It's a chicken and egg thing. I'm almost embarrassed to say two of my daughters chose to move to Mansfield, raising their kids there, when I made the decision to move my family here in the 90s because we had such a strong school system rating. So I think a lot of these things are interconnected, and I just don't want to lose sight of that.
Yeah, and I just want to respond to that quick. I think that's a great observation, and that's the kind of input that we can still take and make sure that sewer is emphasized the right way. high enough, highly enough emphasized the importance of that. What I was really thinking about is I have the goals and actions open here, and in terms of the industrial park, that seems to be potentially the most ripe for pushing forward. And so our understanding is that the town has been working for quite a long time to get the intermunicipal agreement with Brockton. And I think now comes designing and funding the actual sewer installation. And I think what I would observe is that the industrial park it should be less likely to disrupt the pattern. The character of that area is identified as the industrial park, and I think if you can bring sewer there, you can increase the amount of economic development coming out of the industrial park. And so that might be one of the main paths forward over the next 10 years is to focus on that area. My understanding is the other areas might require some other expansion, but I know that it may be more challenging. And so finding, how does the town take those next steps forward? I think the IMA is really going to drive kind of the emphasis towards the industrial park as one of these opportunities for the town to pursue quicker, sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean, you can see how just the sewer line going down the 106 and the Furnace Village area has spawned this, explosion and development of multifamilies, different businesses. So, okay, thanks.
Yeah, actually, just to tag on to that comment, I was on the Climate Action Plan Committee, and we're in the final stages of our report. And one thing about having sewer, that would underlie a lot of our goals from that report.
Right.
Protecting the wetlands, encouraging the dense development. If you need space for a septic, it's more difficult to do the infill development.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we need to look at how Mansfield did it. I mean, I looked at a ton of houses with my daughters, and they have neighborhoods now with sewers, and they're like still 0.6 acre zoning. Still looks very nice.
Right.
It still has that flair that we want to preserve, but
They are more financially sound. They have
Yeah.
a big industrial park. They have more money.
they got two. I mean,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
got another one
right.
up where the bioincubator is.
They have more money, so they could do it, invest. But I agree with you. That investment bring money back.
Yeah, it's a chicken and egg thing.
Yeah,
It
yes.
really is.
That investment.
ROI,
You make the investment, you get the business, you get the funding.
They
right?
got the commuter rail station downtown.
Oh, yeah.
too.
Well, that's the other thing.
Xfinity Center.
I think our trains
They have a
did.
lot of advantages over us, but
Oh,
the
totally.
point is very well taken.
Yeah, but they had that 20 years ago, but then they've done that.
Fair enough.
They've done a lot of improvements to their school system.
I have to mention this because I took to myself to go to the town manager and to many people to drive the need to do something for the seniors. Because Easton, compared with the other towns around, is one that has the worst senior center and services for the seniors. In comparison, there is things that have been done. And in your slide is a footnote possible on the bottom of one of your slides. And it's good that at least it's there and you didn't omit it, but talking about equity, I think seniors in Easton need to be part of that equity formula.
Yeah, I can appreciate that comment, and the plan that really drives a lot of that conversation is the age-friendly action plan, and that gives a lot of detailed steps that the town can take to support its older population, and then what we heard some during our process for this project, but really there's that other project I mentioned was the surplus property. So looking at the properties that are going to be vacated with the new public safety building, and through that conversation, and that was the purpose of that conversation is we brought community members together and said, what should we do with these three buildings? Yeah. That's really where the conversation about a senior center seemed to coalesce. And so that was our job here, was to kind of access all the different plans and documents that the town has and pull them in one place. I think the master plan update committee has one more chance to kind of talk about if and how the goals are prioritized and in what order do they come. And I think it's a difficult task, but one thing that we did here was housing. coming up with ways to provide more housing and economic development. And the two main drivers of both of those are installation of sewer. And then I think it's kind of these other conversations about what are the other most important things for the community. And I think my train of thought was, I think we're going to get some feedback from the select board as well. So when we go to visit them in October, I think that they may have some recommendations for us in terms of where things fall on the list. And then that's what we're going to come back to the planning board in November with the final plan and have we'll have some more sort of detail about how they get prioritized. And I think Joanne's still on the call, and so that's something that I'm pretty sure that the master plan update committee is going to talk about at their next meeting, is ways to prioritize some of these actions. The two things I just wanted to mention before it's too late is for the board who has the copy that was transmitted, we did make some changes to pages 30 and 31, and it's really about the financial elements. And I just wanted to touch on it briefly because I think when we come back, when you see it again in November, that section will have changed a fair amount. And one of the reasons why was that our project was moving forward together along with the PACE discussion. And as the community, rejected the override, what we still had this language in there. There was this community compact that was created by the select board, the school committee, and the finance committee. And the language that you have in front of you reflects that community compact. And as we were moving through this process, we understood a little more clearly that the community compact only went into effect if the override passed. So there's a couple elements of that goals and objectives that is going to shift around. A couple of them cannot really be accomplished without having the additional funding that would have come from the override. So in terms of the differences between the plans that you'll see, in your packet and in November, that's probably the biggest change. It's just that financial section is going to get reworked a little bit. I just wanted to call that out. And then the last thing was just our process was to really try to help the town hone in on the goals and objectives. In the 2014 plan, there was 182 goals and actions. And we're trying to winnow that down so that it's a more manageable list, and trying to be a little bit more realistic about the types of things and the number of things that the town can accomplish in 10 years. Because I think in 10 years sounds like a long time, but in reality, it's actually not that long of a period of time. So I think that kind of conversation is helpful as we talk about prioritization. To the gentleman who talked about the senior center, I think that conversation will likely come up in the next 10 years. And so it's good that it's in the master plan. And I think the idea of sewering an area like the industrial park is certainly something that seems like it'll be on the horizon. So those are just a little bit of sort of the thought process as to how we came to some of those goals and where we're putting them in the plan.
Stale.
Someone wants to be promoted?
Yeah, for this conversation.
All right. We're going to do one public comment and then we're going to move on.
Great.
Are they on Zoom, Susie?
I went to Connor to tell them.
This is Dale Carrister. Can you hear me?
Hi, Dale. Just state your name and address, and the floor is yours. Just 1 minute.
Yeah, I'll be quick. Dale Carrister, 21 South Street. I was one of those 30 people who attended that community meeting in June at Frothingham Hall and participated in the small group breakout sessions. I have two issues and concerns that I hope will be incorporated into the master plan and will also be incorporated into the boards when they're relying on the master plan as we move forward in service of the stated goals of economic development and increased housing. Those two concerns are as follows. Number one, that we don't lose sight of continuing to take steps to acquire more open space to preserve as properties come up, for example, where there's an opportunity where the town has a right of first refusal to keep something as open property. And second, to take into account traffic mitigation. Our area down in the Furnace Village, Five Corners area has been suffering, sort of death by 1,000 cuts with all the additional development down here, which was characterized as explosive in this area because of the sewer project. And the gaslight and lamplighter folks in particular, who are assessed anywhere from $14,000 to $17,000 each to support the sewer project for the benefit of the town's economic development, have a devil of a time trying to get out because of the traffic. So I'm hopeful that the master plan and the boards who are relying on it will take into account appropriate traffic mitigation measures as we move forward. Thank you very much. I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. All right, we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you very much for this very helpful presentation. And we'll look forward to seeing you again in, I guess it's October, November. But we'll see you again in a couple of months.
Yep, November. That's our goal, is to come back in November. Great. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Have a nice night.
You too.
All right. We have another presentation tonight.
Yeah.
All right. This is the proposed local historic district, Josiah Keith House, 479 Bay Road.
Thank you. I have no
Presentation by Mr.
presentation. Hello. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
I'm Wayne Beitler. I'm a community planner. I work with Ken and Suzanne in the planning department. And I just wanted to talk with you a little bit about the proposed Josiah Keith House local historic district. It's down at 479 Bay Road. Portions of the house date back to 1717, and it is the oldest house in Easton. The former owners, the DeWares, restored it pretty meticulously. It's under a new ownership over the last several years. The Historical Commission has been contemplating proposing a local historic district for the property, and has had some conversations with the owners and tenants. The house is owned by a gentleman who lives on Long Island, and the tenant is his son. You may have seen signs, the Josiah Keith House Inn. He has a little bed and breakfast operation. He leads some tours. He's very involved in the tercentennial celebration planning. And they are very open to entertaining a local historic district for the property. Under Chapter 40C of the general laws, a local historic district puts regulatory controls over exterior changes to properties visible to a public right-of-way that require a building permit. So basically, it's not painting or basic maintenance or basic landscaping, but anything on the outside of the house that you would pull a building permit for would come to the Historical Commission for review and advisement to grant that certificate for that work. So this is just being presented to you tonight to answer any questions you may have. From this, it would go to the Select Board for consideration of a warrant article, and then to town meeting for the special town meeting, which I believe is November 10th, for vote by the people of town.
Now, Wayne, how does that work with just we're just talking about a single.
It's a single
parcel,
property,
right?
yes. They're actually quite common. You see them in more developed towns. Somerville has, quite a few single property local historic districts. In more outlying towns, they tend to be multi-property districts. So that's what people are used to seeing. This would be Easton's third local historic district. Downtown Northeaston, the local historic district was adopted in 2010. It was expanded in 2013. Then in 2020, there were 5 houses and Pine Grove Cemetery down at Morrison Foundry, the Hayward Pool Local Historic District. And then this is a proposed local historic district for this house and its outbuildings.
That was very helpful. I don't have any additional questions. Board members?
One of the slides in there showed a neighborhood, but it's just one house?
It's just
not-
one house,
not a
yeah, it's
group
the
of
house
houses.
and the outbuildings. So
Okay.
it's sort of like a Z-shaped lot.
Okay,
It might
okay.
have,
I
yeah.
must have read it incorrectly.
Yeah, it's when you go down before Flynn on the left side and the right side.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I've seen it.
Yeah, it's
I'll have
the
to pay
ochre.
more attention.
Yeah, it looks like this.
Yeah.
Well, there is a field behind. Is that?
Yep. Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful house. Interestingly, it used to be another story higher, and then the bottom rotted out, and they lowered it down, a couple hundred years ago, actually.
Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, it's pretty fascinating. I've been inside a couple of times as well. And we're really gratified that the owner and the tenant are interested in pursuing this with us.
I don't remember what our role was in 2020.
You don't really have one. This is more
Yeah.
informational. What is it? Regulatorily, statutorily, it's the Historic District Commission, which in Easton is the same as the Historical Commission, proposes it, and then it goes to town meeting. So the select board puts it on the warrant, or if they are not prepared to do so, you could do a citizen's petition to get it on the warrant. But the two inflection points are the Historical Commission and town meeting.
And so we're just an advisory role.
Your advisory, if this group would like to, vote to support the proposal, the proposed, Josiah Keith Local Historic District, that would be very appreciated.
What does the owner get out of this?
He has asked the exact same thing. And if he does manage to come up for a town meeting, I think you might enjoy meeting him. And the answer is you don't gain much and you don't lose much financially. It tends to not have a huge impact on the property values. You get the security of your investment. Properties like this tend to have a fairly narrow range of folks who are interested in buying them, living there, being their caretakers. And especially with a parcel like this, its raise and redevelopment potential is rather limited as well. So you get security, recognition, safeguarding of your investment. That is what you get out of it.
So there's no tax benefit for doing it?
No.
Oh, interesting.
No grants, no support to.
No.
Not like farm status or something.
There may be other grants not really available through the town, but sometimes grant organizations can make grants available, but not really.
So are you looking for us to do a recommendation tonight, or?
It's not required. A vote to support the proposed Josiah Keith Local Historic District would be appreciated.
Motion to support the historic region as proposed. Kevin.
Thank you.
Second, Kid.
Zigmund, second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none? Kedem?
Aye.
Kid?
Aye.
Weeks?
Aye.
Zygmunt?
Aye.
Stetson's and I as well.
Awesome.
All right.
All right.
Thank you all for your
Thanks.
time. I really do
Good luck.
appreciate
Thanks
it.
for coming in.
Thank you. You all have a great night.
All right. Next up, we've got meeting minutes from the last meeting.
Very good. I don't know.
Motion is yours then.
Motion to approve the minutes. Kevin.
Have a second.
Your turn.
You're pointing at me. Nope.
Was that a second? I kind of missed it.
Yes, he was.
Okay.
There's a second from Joanne.
All right.
Yep.
Further discussion, hearing and seeing none. Kedem?
Aye.
Kid?
Aye.
Weeks?
Aye.
Zygmunt?
Aye.
And Stetson's and I as well. So this one, this next item is we've got to vote to authorize the continuing signing on behalf of the planning board director. We've been doing this. I mean, Ken, do you have anything else to add on this one?
No, it's just the vote to have somebody else do it is still ongoing. It's just to give the registry and the land court a record of the new signature that comes up. So it's just reaffirming that, hey, this is the new signature. So if you see any other endorsement or any other signature,
What
something
is that? Council?
Yes.
So didn't we already vote on this?
Yeah, I think it's
So
just,
is this just a sign?
Yeah, I
I
think we
think,
just
yeah, I
have to
think it's
sign a
just an
copy of it.
update, yeah.
Okay.
It's just letting that Stephanie wouldn't be
It's a
signing
month
them anymore. It would be me
make
that's
a
signing
motion.
it.
It's you.
Correct.
So do we need to confirm a vote?
I would say you could reconfirm it just for the sake of
Just for the
putting
sake.
it on the record.
Fine. All right.
One of these would get recorded.
Yeah, I have a practical question for you, Ken. So in the past, it didn't happen many times, but there are times that some things that we decide that should be on the drawings that we sign, or on the decisions we make, and they are not there. And then things come back to us, and someone remember, we say that, but it's not there. Theoretically, and I don't think it's real, but theoretically there are more eyes seeing this, especially the people that participated in the meeting. Most likely these things will come up that they are not on the plans or on the decisions. And I don't know, what is your opinion on that? Is that, I am here and there with that issue and not
Well,
totally
part of
convinced.
so I've been doing this for 8 years full time, and 3.5 of which, by definition, in Rhode Island, as the administrative officer, there is no, it happens all the time in terms of one person signing on behalf of a group. The issue of individual items or conditions not being put on there, it's never been an issue for me because I've had, this is my 5th municipality that I've worked for, if I did it right. It's never become an issue because it's checked over by myself. I have in my own ethical obligations, like as part of what I do for a living. I have ethical obligations to continue doing it. There's recourses for that if those issues don't get addressed. But from my perspective and somebody that I've worked with who's been doing this job for close to 27 years at this point, he's never had an issue. In Rhode Island where this document doesn't even exist in Rhode Island because the position has an amount of administrative authority, and the signatures to see a planning commission or a planning board or a board of appeals or a zoning board of review sign things as a majority of the board, you just don't see it because of the practicality of getting 5 signatures. When I did it in Norwell, I've had a 40 some odd page plan, and you'd be taking 4 hours to sign it because you'd be having 5 signatures on each page because each page gets recorded. So from a practical standpoint, I've never seen it as an issue. What I actually do see more of an issue is people printing Mylars too soon. If that's for 51 Rockland, I can already tell it's not right because they won't have, there's a line that has to be undone on that, and there's a couple other pieces that we'd have to get revised on it. But from a practical standpoint, from the time that I've been doing it, as well as someone else who's been doing it for almost 27 years, I'm sure it's happened at some point, but it's not anything that any of us have ever seen or know of anybody where that's been an issue for them or that somebody has brought it up. But it comes down to just a pragmatic, if you've got multiple projects going on, people have to be available to sign these things. And it's really just a pragmatic, it's a pragmatic function of this is what we get paid to do. The staff gets paid to do the reviews, the staff reports, the analysis. An extension of that is memorializing the vote that you guys take, that the Board of Appeals would take. The select board can have the town administrator sign for them on things, I'm sure. There's just that's the administrative aspect of these things. The decision is rendered. It just takes staff now. They have to put it all together. And that's part of just the day-to-day operations of there's got to be a level of trust in the staff to do these things.
Yeah, it is a practical matter. Back when we were here every week, maybe it wasn't as big of a deal, but now that we're doing the hybrid and remote, we got to do this.
Well, no, you don't need to convince me.
Yeah, I know. All right, let's just wrap it up with a quick vote, and then I do want to talk about one other thing I think we have to vote on. Can we get a vote on this? Just the
Do we
vote
need a motion?
to authorize, make a motion.
Motion to renew statement of vote authorizing planning director to sign on behalf of the planning board.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Kettup.
Aye.
Kidd.
Aye.
Weeks.
Aye.
Zygmunt.
Aye.
Stetson's an aye as well. All right, so we'll sign this at the end of the meeting.
The end of the meeting?
Okay. So, Ken, did you see the email that I forwarded to you? And I guess part of my chair updates is we have a new planning director. Welcome to Ken Kirkland. He comes from us with a tremendous amount of experience and a high degree of professionalism. We thank you for joining our community and for helping us out tonight and on future nights. One thing that may have gotten lost in the transition was an email that I had forwarded to you about a stormwater committee that is being convened. And I think the select board is looking for us either tonight, possibly at the next meeting, although it looks like they're voting on our representative on the same day as their next meeting. So I think we kind of have to do this tonight. And I don't know if you could just, I mean, I know you're looking at the same email as me, but does any of this ring a bell? I mean, no. All right. So basically what...
Also, I think too, it's looking at he sent it on Wednesday at 11:15, but it was to the email that we don't have. It might have gotten overlooked because it wasn't to the email that I have on file for the address back and forth. But also, I think in terms of, so I've always had the experience of the any pertinent item not reasonably anticipated. I try not to use that, or I advise people to not use it if at all possible. And certainly not to, have items that people come in and talk about things. I would imagine this could be just a chair update and an item of, internal business that has no external, it's not a vote on a project. It's not a vote on a special permit.
Right.
It's not something that was advertised. It's something that would really there's no right of public comment. It's almost as if it's almost like an internal reorganization. You would have it on the agenda, but I would say that if there was anything that was not reasonably anticipated, you could say this because of the timing of the agenda had to go out. There was an email that, probably maybe a not used often email account, and you could just say there's an item in the interest of getting it finished so that the select board can make their vote in a timely fashion without having to meet the same night they are and put it on the agenda in such a way that this board's determination gets to them in time for them to make a decision. I can't see.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. So just for the viewers at home, there's going to be some sort of a committee that's studying some streamlining of stormwater issues, something that we've talked about a little bit as of late. And they're asking for one representative from the Planning and Zoning Board. And I didn't see it. It went to my Gmail, which I almost never check. I checked it I checked it on the way over today and saw it there. So, I guess I'm looking for a volunteer for this committee that none of us really know much about. I guess we could vote for it.
Just one piece, I would do a vote to add the board's vote to add to the agenda a request to appoint a planning and zoning board representative to the Stormwater Utility Steering Committee. That's the name it's used in the email, just so for the purposes of process. That's typically how they've done it. It was just a board vote to add the item.
Get so moved on that.
Yeah, so move. Good.
Second, Kid.
All right. Any further discussion to add? Kevin.
Aye.
Kid.
Aye.
Weeks.
Aye.
Zygmunt.
Aye.
Stetson's and I as well. Now on to the issue. Who's been the most vocal or active discussing stormwater issues? Thomas.
Almost.
I am in the CPC too, so.
I know. But does everybody have something?
I want to give opportunity to other people. Joanne is
She's master.
She's doing master plan. Alan, are you looking for a new?
Probably not. I'm already on a couple of boards outside of this board
that
take up my evenings. So
I don't want to hog the.
I mean, the climate plan is almost done.
You'd be willing to pick this up, Tim?
Yeah, I
feel like
I
it's
can
gonna
do
be
this.
somewhat related. Maybe.
Maybe.
Do we have somebody to
Hugely. It's hugely.
more than some of them? I'm understating it. Do we have a motion to nominate Kathy?
Motion to nominate
So moved.
Kathy for the position on that.
So you just say
You
second.
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 All right.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none?
Aye.
Get him. Kid.
Aye.
Weeks.
Aye.
Zigman.
Aye.
And Stetson's and I as well. Thank you very much.
Sure thing.
Did Anna second? Did you make
No, she
I'll
put,
second.
I'm second.
a second? Got it.
She-
That's what I thought.
She won.
I saw.
Now, I want to turn it over to Ken for his first introduction and updates.
So I think I'm gonna keep it brief, although brevity's not my best. Just for everyone to be on the same page. I believe Vice Chair Mickey was at my interview, and she's unfortunately unavailable tonight. But it just as alluded to earlier, this is my 8th year doing this in a full-time professional capacity. But I bet this will be my 15th year doing this in some involved capacity. I'm originally from Rhode Island, but I've also done time in Massachusetts and Rhode Island in these positions. And so this is not, I was previously with the City of Woonsocket, City of Cranston, both, Woonsocket was about 43,000 people, Cranston was about 88 and change, and I was also with the towns of Braintree and Norwell. So this is not my first time in this capacity with the boards and that I'm staffed to. It's not unfamiliar. It's just getting back into the groove of I was away from here just long enough to it's just below the surface, and I got to get it back into the functional fluid memory. I did want to note when we just talked about the master plan update, there's a lot of common denominators. This is when they say this is not unique to Easton. That's true. My last big piece in Woonsocket was I got our comprehensive plan was approved by the state, was reviewed and approved by the state, and it was good until 2027, I believe. And a lot of the same issues that face Easton are the same issues that face Woonsocket. Completely separate, completely different socioeconomics, demographics, different in all ways, but a lot of the same issues in terms of housing affordability, limited land that's available for development or even redevelopment. The main difference is I can count on one hand how many properties in Woonsocket had septic. So there's still a bit of change, but the same problems are still there in terms of how do we do things. The permitting audit was actually done by a lecturer of practice of mine from when I was at UMass at graduate school. And so I just got the revision from that. I believe he sent it Friday, but I got it this morning. And a lot of the discussion, a lot of the low-hanging fruit that he had mentioned were very similar to either legislative changes in Rhode Island that happened. There was a series of legislative changes that fundamentally changed so we have the Subdivision Control Act and the Zoning Act. Similarly, the guiding statutes at home were changed significantly in terms of review, the types of projects, and the administrative authority that's granted to my counterparts at home. And so when we talk about things, and I think, Chair, we had brief discussion on this when we met on Zoom, was when you talk about development, you talk about things that you want, the types of uses you want and where you want them because they're best suited for infrastructure, the places, the other similar uses, et cetera. We had those discussions in Rhode Island as well. And we talk about special permits. Some changes in Rhode Island where they pretty much eliminated the concept of special permits unless you have specific and objective criteria. So it's not just talking about, is it harmonious? That's not a specific and objective criteria. Is it a certain size? That's specific and objective. So when we're talking about special permits, we had to have that conversation because saying, okay, does this use in this area, does this need to be, is this a use by special permit in this particular zoning district for a reason, or should it just be permitted? Because now we have to come up with extra steps to keep it as a special permit where it becomes a default by right. So a lot of the similar discussions that we have here that I saw in the permitting audit were things that we were already discussing. When I say we, it's myself and the zoning official. So I was the city planner, but also the deputy director of the entire department of, I believe, 29 people, not including the director. And so we were tasked with looking at the use table and saying, does this need to be a special permit? Or should we say, maybe it doesn't need to be, let's make it a by right use in this area, and then say in all these other areas, nah, let's err on the side of caution. Or maybe come back to it later and come up with specific and objective criteria. So there's a lot of common denominators, and I'm not saying that because we talked about it, but there's a lot of similarities that you wouldn't expect to have between the city of Woonsocket and the town of Easton, but they're there. So I think it's interesting, when we talk about the permitting process and the regulatory process in general, how you can make it easier. Checklists became extremely important in Rhode Island because they've been codified. And when you have a project and an application, you have to do a certificate of completeness, essentially saying it's a complete application before it moves forward. They essentially changed it and said if it's not on the checklist, you can't say it's an incomplete application. So it kind of cuts both ways. There was a little bit of flexibility for certain projects. If you knew, okay, they're in the process of working on it from this area, we can kind of move the project forward and work with them. While when we get to the point where we need it, their other piece will have already come in and we can work with it that way. But checklists have really become codified in Rhode Island as being the gate for getting your proposal through into the process. And I kind of see that as losing that flexibility kind of cuts both ways in it's good, but it's also bad. And I see it doesn't really help, but I also understand that some of my counterparts were using it unproductively, we'll say. But I like the idea of a lot of the stuff that the consultant had talked about were things that I have already been involved in some way, shape, or form, and have had experience with either here in Mass or in Rhode Island most recently. So it was interesting seeing all of the similarities, even just across state lines. And it's like, yeah, I've experienced that. I've seen that. I've been working with that. So.
Well, this is perfect timing then, because, obviously we're going to be getting the permitting audit. I know we've, as a group, see a lot of those recommendations as low-hanging fruit. I'd love to, once we get that, I'd love to put together, a timeline so that we can try to get some of that low-hanging fruit on the Springtown meeting. And let's get some things done. And then longer term, because I think we're going to need to map out some community engagement. I was really pleased to hear that the master plan, Mr. Bagg, was talking a lot about the industrial park, which is something that we as a group have talked about, and that Washington Street corridor. And we may make it different, but I think what we should do is map out a strategy to get us to next year's fall town meeting with a proposal to try to transform that area over time. Meaning, because the sewer is going to take 3 years anyway, probably 2 to 3 years to get put in over there. So the development's not going to be with the snap of a
when
finger.
you say we do, is basically the only tool we have is the bylaws.
That's exactly right.
That's the only thing. I said, I was thinking when he mentioned hotels, I was thinking that I want to go and check if that's a permitted use for the industrial park. I think it is.
Really? I haven't looked at it. Maybe we need to.
But it's one of the things that
industrial is just
popped to my
office and
head.
industrial.
We need to open the uses for that park. Put whatever you want there, more or less.
And allow larger structures.
Besides the
take
marijuana.
take down some of the parking requirements. There are a lot of different things that we can do with that.
Lot size.
Absolutely. I think we put it all on the table.
Setbacks, all that. They told us, the people that were here, the owners, they told about setbacks being also something that.
Well, and I think, one of the things I
an
get to
industrial
thinking
park,
about, No, but you can look at it in sort of two ways too. The industrial park already has a very intense use to it, and we maybe increase the intensity in terms of what's allowable there. And then we also have a corresponding increase on Washington Street. Maybe it's not as intense as in the industrial park, but sort of, almost like an arm of it, step-toeing into the industrial park. But I think we've got to utilize the feedback that we're getting, and let's get some community engagement over the course. Let's do this the right way, the way that we did it with the MBTA zoning. We didn't just, try to get this through in a couple of months' time. We put together community engagement, we had visioning sessions, then we did, the public outreach, which was huge, and it was still very difficult to get through. But I think if we're going to propose something that's really significant and could contribute, I think that's what we've got to do. So do we think? I mean, I think next fall of 2026 sounds right to me.
Yeah. I'd also like to add too, a lot of his low-hanging fruit was identifying things that are already, now, let me step back a bit. So I came here with no preconceived notions or any pre-context of anything. There was no, this is an issue coming up. This is, it's like, we have some articles at town meeting you're gonna have to come into, back as things that I've done. But I came here with no preconceived notions of things that need to get improved, things that need to get, you can always improve. There's never a perfect process. And reading that report is one of the first things that I read, because I knew him from when he was one of my teachers. And a lot of, when he calls it low-hanging fruit, it's because it doesn't require town meeting approval. A lot of it is internal regulation review. A lot of it is updating checklists, which we may or may not already have, but just make sure they're up to date so that when somebody comes in, we still require, I know when I was just doing one of my template staff report, fold your plans, don't roll them. I want the exact opposite, because we don't even take plans anymore because it's all 100% digital through Permitize. So the only one I would get is going to be the Mylar that goes to the registry. So things like that of, again, same things where I was dealing with before. People are giving me 13 copies of an 11 by 17 plan, which will take up a serious amount of resources to print and get going, and they go right into the circular file because everything's digital, everything is online. Same thing, we have OpenGov except Permitize, instead of Permitize. So a lot of that, what he classifies it as low-hanging fruit because it doesn't require that much effort in terms of the approval process. A lot of it was making sure, conservation, the wetlands regulation, the wetlands protection regulations seem pretty good. Just make sure everything's up to date like it usually is. Make sure you're on top of those things. Same thing with, say, the planning board rules and regulations, making sure that your counts are correct and that, your stormwater requirements match what the state has, and make it so that don't make additional stormwater requirements in addition to what the state requires, because then that causes issues with the extra amount of permitting, unless it's absolutely critically necessary. A lot of those things are just rules and regulations, which only require public hearings here. So I did like that, and it goes back into the subject of, these are things I was already doing and that I'm familiar with. And so things like keeping the checklists updated, making sure that your rules and regulations, that you look at them on a fairly regular basis to account for either new changes at the state, or making sure that if you have to follow stormwater, make sure that your regulations match what you want them to follow, and if you don't need to have anything extra, or if the additional layer of regulation was done, it's no longer required because the underlying stormwater regulations have changed and that extra layer is no longer needed. Keep up with that and make sure that you're aware of those things, so that when somebody comes in and they need to meet stormwater regulations, they know there's not two different sets they have to look at the same time. So it's things like that, and I think that it's really helpful, because he said, you guys are actually very far ahead of other places that have similar issues like this. So we've done a pretty good job of keeping up with, the town of Easton has done a good job of keeping up with its rules and regulations and making sure that they're up to date with current practices, and making sure that if there's additional levels of regulation, it's because it's to address it's something unique to the town, rather than for the sake of having an additional layer, not because they want to, but because there's a very specific concern that had to get addressed.
So maybe it's 3 phases that we're proposing. Maybe one is to address some of the actual low-hanging fruit through some public hearings. And maybe you can help us identify some of those that, in your experience, we could just knock off even by the end of the year. And then a time frame for if we have to make some changes, and I'm thinking a special permit, changing the special permit practice. There's no way we're going to be able to do that through a public hearing. That's got to go to town.
Yeah.
No,
So-
that will be,
And that'll be
Yeah.
a bit of a battle, I
Yeah.
suspect. I mean, I think,
it will be.
honestly,
Yeah.
the battles I've had on that. on this
I
point.
know, but on the other hand, Joanne, and this master plan is missing something very important that usually you put in plans, and is the objective, that is not technical. What do you want to achieve? And in front, what do you want for this town? You want rural look, you want city look, what do you want? And it's not there. It doesn't say what you are trying to put. It's, we have financial issue, and we need to do development of
The vision statement,
of housing
some
and
high-level
that.
goals.
And there are some people in town that they don't share that because their view of what they want for the town is not exactly that. So I think there is a previous agreement on the very higher level, what do you want for the town of Easton, that is not on that plan and is not technical. And it precedes the technical. Because if you, as an objective, want to keep Easton rural, you cannot propose what you're proposing.
I think you're right, Amos. I'll just say to that
And
the
there is a conflict, right? There is a conflict with certain amount of the population in Easton that don't share that. So
Yeah.
that discussion is not there. It needs to be brought up. Maybe they are hiding it because they don't want the conflict, but it's a problem.
I had the same
think-
opinion when I read through the slides, is that where is that one-page high-level goal statement or vision, or, the uber vision of what it is we want, maybe across 3 or 4 dimensions, or even quantized in a, more formal goal statement. But yeah, I think it could definitely benefit from that stake in the ground that here is what we see, here is what we want. And people will very quickly either accept or reject or debate.
I think so. The master plan committee was formed after the project was already issued to RFP, and once the consultants were hired and had already agreed their work plan, et cetera. It was intended to be an update to the Envision Easton plan that was done 10 years ago. So in a complete rewrite, there would have been a whole new visioning process with extensive public participation, vision statement, redevelopment, et cetera. Because this is only an update, that was way beyond the scope of what the project could handle, is my understanding. Ken, you might have more to add to this in your conversations with Stephanie. But I think you guys are completely right. Like, there's no opening as to what these actions all ultimately connect to. But I think that's just I think that's just because of the structure of the project and the budget that was available.
Maybe it just needs to be restated from the original plan that we didn't go back and review. Just recycle that initial visioning statement or statement.
Yeah, if you guys could both email Jeff and just pass your comments along to him, I think that would be great. I'll of course pass them on too, but I think it would be good to hear your exact perspective for him.
Well, it may be opening a Pandora's box, but this is a technocratic plan, and you cannot. It's my opinion. It's my humble opinion. If you keep it there, you are inviting conflict. I think I am more for opening the dialogue, and it's my recommendation to that committee or whoever to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been through this with many different corporations, and we would typically start with the high-level vision, and then we would have the goals. And we had an acronym for the goals. They had to be specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and time-based, SMART. If you didn't have all those elements in a well-crafted goal statement, there was an opening, or it wasn't well-bounded. And I think maybe some of that could, find its way in that would help folks really identify.
That additional dimension is more about values. It's more.
That,
Yeah,
again, my understanding is that I think that's beyond the scope of this project. The contract was very small. I don't know what else to. I'm going to pass it over to Ken because I think as a co-chair of the committee, my hands are tied. I know that the consultant budget has essentially run out and they're running on fumes already just to incorporate the comments that they have been receiving and will continue to.
Yeah, so look,
They did carry over all the goals from every planning document that's been done between Envision Easton
yeah, it's more
and
money.
today. So, but in terms of redoing the whole vision and kind of starting from scratch as you would in a new master plan, I don't see that happening unless Ken has some suggestions about how we can do that.
why don't we put a pin in this for now? Because I mean, we're the planning board. We're not the board that's doing the master plan. But it's it's valuable feedback that you guys provided.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure Joanne will let Jeff know, and you guys are free to send your comments there. I did want to turn to the next item, which is citizen commentary. It's a new one. I haven't seen that on one of these before. What is that, Ken?
Just to carry, it was my previous chair had always wanted it on the agenda, and when I came into Woonsocket, he always had it because I guess the city council has a section for public commentary, and I think he's always seen it just as an ability for people to come in and just talk about anything planning related, and it was just a carryover from just as a good practice of letting people know that you can still come here even if it's not an agenda item. You're limited with what if you come up with something, we can't make votes on it or anything like that. But it was mostly to give anybody who would come in. You don't have to have an application in front of us to be able to speak. I mean, you'd still have to ask the chair for permission, all that sort of stuff. But it was given he wanted it specifically called out because he wanted to make sure that people felt comfortable coming to the planning board and saying, you can still talk about things, even if you may not have an application in front of us, but you still have the ability to speak to us about all things planning related, just that we're limited with our ability to, mostly just say, hey, most of the time, if anybody ever did come in, and I can count on one hand, excluding my thumb, how many people did, unrelated to an application, but it was mostly, sure, let's, Ken, we can, give Ken a call tomorrow or an email, he's open, or stop by or whatever works best for you, but he's available. And it was just something that he liked. And the town of Cumberland, where he did some work, he saw that they had it, and he liked having that as an option on the planning board as well.
I think it's a nice idea. I guess my concern is exactly that, though, is that people are going to come in and ask about potential projects, and then we're going to have to tell them we can't talk about that. You got to put something in front of us. I don't know. It's just
Chair, if I may. So
yes, please.
At the regional planning agency that I work at, every public meeting that we have has a public comment item on the agenda. As Ken mentioned, I think very few people ever take that opportunity. But also you're allowed to establish rules for it as well too. So you can say that, for example, one person can speak for a maximum of 2 minutes, and then we move on to the next comment or something like that too. So you can put rules in place to kind of make sure we're not here for like 5 hours.
That's a good note. Well, and it's not just that though. I want to make sure that we're not here just fielding questions about, projects that have not been properly noticed. That's my bigger concern.
Yeah, I mean, it almost conflicts with your comments have to be relative to something that we're discussing.
Right. So, I mean, I'm all right trying it out, but I would want a footnote, Ken, talking about, it's got to be general land use and planning as opposed to any specific projects. Otherwise, we'll be forced to shut down the conversation. Just a note like that. I mean, I don't necessarily think we have to limit it to time, the amount of time. I mean, I can do that if people are getting long-winded, but definitely on the commentary, because if we aren't notifying the public that there's going to be a discussion about a particular development project, we really can't be talking about it. Okay. All right, but that's a good note. Thank you, Joanne. All right. Any final comments or thoughts?
I have a question, Ken. You say that you are already filing electronically all these plans and drawings. or you are going to be filing
It
electronic?
will be. So with this, and then in my previous job, it was automatic. There was no.
Well, I can tell you, I'm a retired mechanical engineer. I designed manufacturing lines and automation for over 30 years. With all due respect to the civil engineering and all this drawing, it's nothing compared with a production line for very sophisticated equipment. And we have zero paper for many years, for at least 2 decades, with approval of things that cost billions. And I do not understand, and I have been trying to push this, why we are not totally electronic, including your checklist, including the application. All that can be done electronic. We have done in corporations things a lot more complicated than this. And it's all electronic, and you don't need all the labor. It's automatically funneled in a very efficient way. Will that be ever possible? I mean, 5 years I'm trying to figure out why we are not doing it.
So I know so we have our version of Permitize is OpenGov at home in Rhode Island. It started over 10 years ago when they made commercial, family daycares were done applications because they were reviewed and approved by the state. There's no local, it's almost like a use exempt from local zoning. That was the first test case where they did, if it started as an electronic application, you never printed a piece of paper. Your certificate of occupancy was digital, your permit application was digital, the payment was done by card, everything was digital. They've expanded that now and have essentially put everybody, with few exceptions, are now on OpenGov. And the question for me was, has there ever been a either statutory change or some sort of legal interpretation in terms of the Public Records Act? Because as far as I was concerned, the formal record was the physical plan that was approved and signed and everything. The registry has it printed, same as that. It's going to go to the registry. It's going to hang in there in perpetuity. And same thing went for here. And part of it is just the nature of they're still allowing things to be done electronically. There's still sections that say, because it's Massachusetts and just how things are, they still have to have signatures, because if you didn't have this document, but you had somebody, the board just assigned somebody to do it, the registry doesn't know who that name is. And so part of that is giving them a heads up as to who the signatory is. And wait a minute, hold on, how come I've got a signature block that's got 5 lines on it, but only one person signed it? Either something happened where only one person is signing it because it's just a board member that wants to sign it and send it on its way. Is there an issue? Is this the planning director? Is this the zoning administrator? Whoever it is, so forth and so on. And some of it is just that when you update, they do a big thing with, I think it was like whatever the Electronic Uniformity Act or something that went, I forget what chapter it was. They take that into account and think that that's the only thing they have to do, but they also don't realize that by having an electronic signature here, they still have to amend Chapter 4181U, which deals with construction and subdivision covenants, referencing the fact that it still has to be a physical form. And it's just that most of the people that do legislative drafting don't actually do this on a regular basis. They may not be practicing professionals. And I've been told through town council that it's been clarified that we can use Permitize and that you don't need to print the final document, which is amazing because I don't like having, I had a subdivision that with the drainage report was 1,500 pages double-sided. And it was 3 reams of paper just to print it. And it had to be done. And I only needed 1 for the record copy, but 1,500 pages is still a lot, double-sided. And so a lot of this is just because there's still some hesitancy about doing things electronically. Banks can still do faxes, and for mortgages, they consider faxes to be as good as and original signature. That's been the case for quite some time. But there are still some places that just they're not comfortable with doing something completely digital, because we've all heard of cases where, servers disappear, servers crash, drivers or drives crash, they go bad, they disintegrate, the data disappears, it gets corrupted. And the difference is that in your field, most of your stuff is probably proprietary, and there is no public record. It's not a matter of public record. The things that the board does and that you guys do, that's a matter of public record in perpetuity. So your decisions, that Mylar, I know when I worked in Norwell, I met the Plymouth Registrar of Deeds, and he still, you could still find copies of, you can still see he holds it once or twice a month, where you can go in and see the first registry book, and you can physically see, much like how they have the Declaration of Independence out for display, you can still see the King's Charter. I have a copy of the King's Charter for Rhode Island posted up on my wall at home. So there's a difference between, and I don't disagree with the functionality of it. I love the fact that I can do stuff completely digital, and I don't have to crowd my office and Wayne's office and Jen's office with applications and everything else. That's amazing. But I think there's still a hesitancy with public records, and we're kind of getting there, but there's a very stark difference between what was the decision from the town meeting warrant in 1973, or when did we adopt the subdivision control law? There needs to be a record of that may not exist if it's just a digital warrant that gets signed digitally by the clerk. Who knows if that drive disappears, and that's the only record of that occurring outside of somebody's verbal, or the old way that the Arab language wasn't written, it was spoken something like 800 years before it was actually written down. It was a verbal, stories were passed down verbally. If the only manner of those records disappears because it's a digital format, then it runs into issues of public records. And
as we've talked about before, some aspect of this is controlled by state law, particularly as Kent pointed out with the Registry of Deeds. So some of it's out of our hands, some of it's not. Some of it's a cost function. We've had this discussion many times over the years, but again, very valuable point. I appreciate your expertise on it and the explanation. Let's wrap up this meeting, because I know we've got to talk about whether or not we're signing that Mylar, speaking of which. So can I have one final motion for the evening?
Motion to adjourn.
Kedem, second.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Kedem.
Aye.
Kidd.
Aye.
Weeks.
Aye.
Zygmunt.
Aye.
And Stetson's and I as well. Thank you, Easton. Thanks again, Ken, for a wonderful first meeting. Thank you. All right.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Hey, good night and good luck.
Sorry, I missed your